Hello everyone, my name is Mohammad Azam, and in this video you're going to learn how you can download data from an API, a JSON API, and then insert that data into SQLite database using SwiftData as a framework. Now the first thing is, well, where do we get the data? So for that, I'm just going to use the data available on JSON placeholder. This is all dummy data, and you can go to jsonplaceholder.typepcode.com. And if you scroll down, the data that we're going to use will be posts. And it's just a post, an array of posts, which contain the user ID, title, and body. All right. And the one thing that we actually need in our database is we can put ID, title, body, or we can simply put title and body. It's kind of like up to you. All right. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is to create some sort of a client or a network layer that can download the data. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. We'll call it Swift file. And you can call this anything you want. I can call it post loader, all right? Or you can simply call it like a HTTP client if you want to. So there we go, we created that. I'll create post loader. And the whole responsibility of the post loader is to make the request and get the post and then give you all the post. Now, since we are fetching the post, we should probably create a struct that represents the post, right? And that struct will be codable. And since we're simply decoding it, I'm just going to make it decodable. Now you can decode all the things that you want. I'm just going to put user ID, title, and body. All of these different properties that we have are matching exactly with the data that we're going to be getting from the JSON API. User ID, title, and body. And it is created with the same exact names. Okay? All right. The next thing we need to do is to focus on the post loader. You can rename this to anything you want. And we're going to create the function which is called load post. Async throws. Now, you might be wondering, why can't we just create a generic function? Well, I just want to keep this very simple, right? So I'm just keeping it simple, just creating a load post function. But yeah, if you have a generic HTTP client that you want to use, go ahead and use that. That's perfectly fine. The whole idea is to just load the data, and whoever is calling load post, give them an array of post. All right. So this particular video is not really about how to create a generic HTTP client. We're just focused on if we create a function like load post, which returns the post, how can we save the data into our database? So we're making a request right there. Again, this is not the best load post or network request, all right? So you can watch my other videos where I create a generic HTTP client. I'll actually link it in the YouTube description. So you can definitely check that one out. I'm just trying to get all the posts and trying to return the post, all right? So we have the URL. Next step, we'll perform the request. We're using the URL session.share.data, which is an async function. So we are awaiting on it. Next, we're going to check for HTTP response. We're going to try to cast it to the HTTP URL response. There we go. And we're going to check that if the status code is 200. If everything checks out, then the final thing is to simply decode the data that we received and then return it. So let's decode the data and return the post. Okay, great. So this is a very simple, and this is not the best function to implement into your network layer. I mean, there is a lot of stuff that is missing over here, but this is the most simplistic function which is going to make a request to the provided URL, and it is going to load and give you all the posts. All right. Okay. So we have this post loader function. The next thing is, where should we call this function? I mean, Should we call this function in our content view, which is our root view, or even before? So our scenario for this app is that we want to make a request when the app actually starts, download the data and put it in the database. Put it in a local SwiftData database using SQLite. And one of the places you can make that call will be right inside the app file itself. Now, my app file is called download data into SwiftData app, but your file can be very different. And in order to do that, we also need to create our SwiftData model. We created our DTO model, which is right here. So we created our DTO model, meaning the data that is coming from the JSON API. Don't go ahead and decorate this with a model. This is obviously not going to work because the model can only be applied to classes. So it's not going to work. So you have to create a separate model file which will represent the data in the SwiftData database. So we can go ahead and create a new file for that. And I'll call it post model. But again, the name is kind of like up to you, whatever you want to call it. And we'll create a class because the model, the model macro can only be applied to the classes. And we will import SwiftData. Now we'll come with this post model, which is the actual model persisted to SQLite database using SwiftData. This doesn't really have any properties. Now it's kind of up to you what kind of properties that you want. I can go ahead and create a couple of different properties. If you want to store everything, that's perfectly fine too. We can go ahead and actually kind of get the properties from over here if you want. That's also going to work fine. There we go. And we can go ahead and create an initializer also. So this means that whatever the data is being sent from the server in terms of JSON, we're interested in storing all the data. Now, this might not always be the case. You might say that I don't care about the user ID. So you can simply just remove the user ID and not store user ID at all in your local database if it does not make any sense. But right now, I just want to show you that how you can store everything that you're receiving from the server. You just want to get everything into the database. All right. Okay, so we created this. This is fine. Now the next task is, okay, where should we actually perform this operation? I mean, how do we even save it? Let's go to our app file. And in the app file, we have the content view, which is our root view. And what we can do is we can say that whenever the root view is actually loaded, we can find this task and we can, over here, we can perform importing the data. So I'm going to go ahead and make two different variations of it. So it's always a good idea to just start really basic. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and call import data. Import data. Now there is no such thing as import data, and I'm going to create this function right here. And don't worry, we are going to refactor it a little bit later on. So import data. Now inside the import data, I want to get access and make it async. There we go. So I want to access the main context of SwiftData so I can, insert something into the database. So we don't really have access to the main context. Now I can go ahead over here and say, model context, or I guess over here, model container. Do I have to add something on the top? Okay, maybe I need to add the Swift, what is that called? SwiftData on the top. Dot model container. I can do that. I can create a model container. But since we need to access the model container inside the import data function, I can also go ahead and initialize the container, kind of like on the top. So try and then model container. And we can say for configuration over here. And we can simply pass in one part of it. So this will be post model.self. And the configuration is fine. Whatever the default is, we're just going to use that. Okay. Now, if you have trouble initializing the model container, then it's just going to go ahead and blow up. I mean, there's really nothing we can do. If it's blowing up, you should probably fix that. There's no point giving the user error that, oh, model container was failed to initialize. Well, if it failed to initialize, then your whole app is not usable because you plan to read the data from SQLite database using SwiftData. So model container has to be initialized correctly. All right. So we have the import data, and we are going to change this import data to something else, but right now we just want to get it to work. So inside import data, let's go ahead and get access to the context. So we can say container.main context. Okay, so that's how we're going to get access to the context. But one thing to note over here is the main context is only available on the main actor. So we can also make sure that this function that we have, which is the import data, is actually used on the main actor. All right, so the main context is now going to be accessed on the main actor because we are using this main actor property wrapper. After this, what do we want to do? Well, we have the context. That's great. We do want to fetch the data. Okay, so how do we fetch the data? Well, this is going to be done using the post loader. And there are again different ways of initializing post loader. I'm just going to go ahead and initialize it over here on the top. Post loader. There we go. And we can simply call post loader and dot load post. Okay. There we go, load post. Now load post is a throwable function and it's also an async function. So let's go ahead and capture that. We will have to wrap this with a try catch. So if there is a problem, we should probably get to find out what the problem is. We are going to return some posts. So posts, there we go. Perfect. So post loader.load post will be fired whenever the content view is, the task attached to it executes, and we have the access to the context. We get all the posts. Hopefully we get all the posts. And now we can actually check something. If there are posts, so if post.is empty, if it's not empty, meaning we are getting some post, then we can say insert data into database, into the local database because our on device database. So what we can do is we can say post.forEach, all right, and we'll get access to the post. For every single post, we can create a post model. Now this post model is the actual one that will be stored in the database, right? So this is the SwiftData model. And we need to provide all of these different things like the user ID. And all of these different things are actually available. Like user ID is available over here coming from the post, which is the JSON, the DTO, and then the title, and then the body. Now you can make this much better if the post model has a capability of also passing in the post, which we may cover maybe later on in some other video. But right now we're just trying to get our work done by passing all the different data associated with the post in JSON and initializing our post model. Once we have this post model, all we need to do is to call context.insert and we will insert the post model. All right. Now, since we are inserting all of these different things, we also would like to display these things. So let's go ahead and do something over here. Right over here where we have the window group, we can also pass in the container, the same container that we initialized, so that the rest of the application on all the views will have that data. Now the next thing we want to do is to display this data. All right. So let's go to the content view. Content view is the one that is going to be fired whenever you basically load the page. That's our only view available. We'll try to get access to the environment using the model context. We're going to try to get access to the context. We're going to try to get the query, not quartz, query. There we go. And we'll say post. We're just trying to get all the posts. All right, this will be post model, right? Because this is getting it from the database. And instead of all of that, we're going to do something like this. And I think we may need to import SwiftData again over here. So import SwiftData. Perfect. So the content view is not really doing much. I mean, it's just making a query and it is, getting all the data. I don't even think that we need context. We're not really saving anything. So we may not need the context in this case, but we'll check it out. And we're going through the list. We're displaying the count, meaning how many items are there. And we're going through the item and displaying the title. Now, if you go over here, you will find out, if I scroll down at the very bottom, it's kind of hard to see, but there are 100 entries. So there are 100 posts that are available. All right, so we should see 100 items. And this title post.count should say 100 when we run this. All right, so the next thing is, well, we need to run it. So let me go ahead and launch the app. And we will see that if we can display 100 post items or not. So it's going to take some time to launch. There we go. All right, so here it is. You can definitely see, let me actually show it again. There we go. 100 items. So that's good news because there are 100 items being sent from the network response. So we do have all the 100 items over here. That looks pretty good. Obviously, these are all like random items, meaning they don't mean anything. It's all dummy data. What if I run the app again? Let's go ahead and run the app again. Well, that doesn't sound good, right? You can see right there, now it's 200 items. So every time we are running the app, and yeah, it's the scroll list is a little bit much longer. And you can see the ID occurs multiple times with the collection view. This will give undefined results. Okay, so definitely something weird is going on, that now we have 200 items. And if we run it again, it will be 300 items, right? So this is something wrong. We don't want to do this. So we would like to check this import data function because that is responsible for entering the items in there. Let me go ahead and delete the app. And the problem that we found is that we get access to the context, which is the SwiftData context, but we never checked that if these items were already there or not, right? I mean, we never did that. So let's go ahead and try to do that. Check, or over here, we're going to just make a post descriptor or a query, like a predicate, all right? Predicate to fetch post model, post model objects from, or using SwiftData. That's what we're trying to do. So we'll create a descriptor. So I'll say post descriptor equals to fetch descriptor. And we don't really need to do any predicates or anything. I mean, we're not really setting any predicates. So the fetch descriptor, just like that, is more than enough. Pass in the type also, post model, because that's what we're fetching. And we don't really need to fetch all of them. So we can set the limit to 1. All right. Now, if you're setting the limit to 1, it is only going to be fetching 1. For our use case, it's okay because we just want to see if there are any posts or not. If there are posts, then this, we have already inserted it into the database. So we can set the limit to 1 so that we're only fetching 1. All right. If there's 1, then we know that something already has happened and we don't really want to perform these things again and again. Now we're going to say persisted post try context.fetch, and then we're going to pass in the post descriptor. This is going to return us something, and since we're using try over here, we should wrap this in a do. So let's go ahead and see where we can do that. I guess we can try to do the do over here. There we go. And Control A, select everything, and then Command A to select everything, and Control I to kind of like format it a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we got the persisted post over here. These are the posts that are actually persisted in the database. So if persisted post is empty, if it is empty, then we should probably go and fetch all the stuff, right? So we'll go put the code over here using the post loader or the network layer. Then we are going to go ahead and fetch all the posts. Okay, now using this approach, let's go ahead and now run the application. Okay, so we have 100. That's good on the first try. And let's go ahead and run it again. This time it didn't even execute the load post function, because when we run this part, it actually returns you the data from the database. And since the data is already in the database, on the local database, on device database, it doesn't really perform that fetch. So it looks like our application is now working correctly, right? What we wanted to do. Now, this might not be your case, right? I mean, this might be, your case might be related to versioning system and updating the local device. And we will cover that maybe later on. But this is the case like if you are fetching some sort of a catalog, you just want to fetch it once and then put it in your local database. And now in every single screen and view of your application, you're always reading the data from the local on-device database through the use of SwiftData. So that is exactly what we're trying to achieve, and we did achieve it, but there are some rooms for improvement. This function like import data is currently inside the app file, and maybe we can improve it by introducing some sort of importer that's job is to simply to perform the import. All right, so let's go ahead and see how we can perform that. But before doing that, let's thank our sponsors. This video is brought to you by Azam Sharp School. This is one of the largest catalog for iOS development videos. And now I'm also doing workshops. And if you are a Azam Sharp Pro member, then you get 30% off the live workshop. So we already did one workshop on Reality Kit, and there are other workshops that are lined up. But apart from workshop, you do have access to all of these courses also, which comes with membership. Now, if you plan to buy these courses individually, like some people do, that's fine. You can do that. I mean, you can check out my brand new latest course on core data. If you want to learn MVVM, you have MVVM course. This is the most popular course, which is the full stack iOS development, because everyone wants to learn iOS development and Vapor, creating server side. And you can see there's a huge list of courses that is available, including the Reality Kit. All right. So you can get access to all of these courses, which are like 22 courses, 130 hours of content. If you become a Azam Sharp member, you can become a member for $25 a month. Or if you want to save $50, you can sign up for the whole year. And also check out the workshops. I am adding more and more workshops. So this workshop will be on Vapor. There are only 10 seats, so small class. And we're going to do very hands-on exercises. So definitely check out these workshops. Again, if you are a member, Azam Sharp member, you can get 30% off. For further inquiries, you can, contact me and I'll let you know how you can do that. And Introduction to Test-Driven Development or Testing in iOS, which is in April. Again, these are all really amazing workshops. Very, very, very hands-on, like literally like one slide and then we just dive into the code. So these are really amazing workshops. So check out azamsharp.school. And also please share this with your friends so that they can become member and they can enjoy all of these different courses. Thank you so much. Now let's go back to the video. All right, so our function import data is working, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that this functionality of importing data is extracted somewhere else, not right inside the app file. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file. I'll call it data importer, okay. I mean, you can come up with a better name. Naming is the hardest part, right? And I'll say data importer. There we go. Now, in order for this data importer, whose job is to import to work, we must have access to the context. This will be our model context and the loader. The loader is the one that's actually going to be loading, right? This is our HTTP or this is our network layer. So this is a post loader and we're going to call that or we're going to pass that. The model context is part of the SwiftData, so we'll go ahead and import SwiftData also over here. Now, if you have different kinds of loaders, like a post loader or multiple loaders, then you may have a protocol associated with it. So over here, instead of using the concrete implementation, you will use a protocol. All right, but I don't really have any mocked version of the post loader, so I'm just going to use the post loader, the actual implementation. And now inside over here, we can create that function. Now the function is already created, so I bet we can simply get this function, the whole thing, just copy it and go to the data importer and just use that function over here. We may need to change a couple of different things like the container. There's no container over here. We don't really need this part because we already have that. Post loader. So it's not, okay, so let's call it post loader, I guess. That will minimize our work instead of loader. Let's go ahead and build it. Okay, that's fine. Now this import data is only importing the post, but if you had some other stuff, you can write it over here, but that's fine for us for now. And the only remaining part left to do is to actually use this, all right? So let me first remove some of this code. Let's say over here, we don't need that because all of this data, all of this stuff will be inside the data importer, right? Okay, so what else we need? Well, in the task, we can go ahead and create data importer, okay? We can pass in the context, which can be the container.main context, and the post loader, which will be post loader. Well, we don't really have the post loader now because I deleted it, so we can initialize it somewhere on the top. There we go. Post loader. Okay. And now we can go ahead and say importer.import data. But let's see what's going on over here. I think we may have to use await and try await. Okay. So this part can actually throw errors. Let's go ahead and wrap this. And if we do have an error, we'll simply go ahead and do that. Inaccessible due to protection level. So probably we have made it private. Let's go back and remove the private part. There we go. There we go. And then we can go ahead and build it. Okay. Cache block is unreachable over here. What are we doing wrong over here? There are no errors. Really? I thought there are actually errors in the import data. Let's go. So this one is not really throwing any errors. Okay, so I think we're catching the errors over here. Maybe that's why. So what we want to do is we want to remove this part. And if there are any errors, just throw it and then the parent can just catch it. So async throws. There we go. Just make sure that we call it throws. Perfect. Control A to select all and Command A to select all and Control I to format it a little bit. Okay, let's go back over here. Okay, now it looks a little bit better, right? We have this task which is creating this. You can also try to initialize this inside your, inside your init function. I think we can do that also. So we can say data importer, which is data importer, and then from inside over here, we're not really going to pass anything, but we can say data importer equals to data importer, passing in the context. I'm not sure if the context will be available at this point, but we can definitely check it out. And post loader, so that we don't really need this particular line. All right. Okay, let's try it out. Let's go back, delete this. The code really hasn't really changed. I mean, it's the same code. We just placed it somewhere else. Okay, so that works. We have 100 items, as you can see. So that is still working. Now, if I go ahead and run it again, it should not even make that call. It should be just getting the data from the database. Oops, I'm not sure. I think what's going on. Oh, here we go. I think something was pressed on, but here we go. All right. Let's try to run it again. Final time. Yeah, looks good. All the data is being read and retrieved, fetched from our on-device storage, which is SQLite using SwiftData. So this is a simple way that you can make a call to some, JSON API, get the data, and then save that data into SQLite, like on-device storage, into SwiftData. And there were some apps that I was building that was using this technique. They were also using the versioning number, so I can also update the data, because the data, in this case, the data remains the same, right? I mean, in this case, the data is just these 100 records. But in your actual application, the data will change. Maybe you will add a couple of different records or delete or update things. So how will we tell our application that, hey, you gotta download the data again because things have actually changed? So those are the things that we have to think about for future, and those are the things we will try to cover in the future tutorials. But hopefully you have enjoyed this. Thank you so much. And once again, check out azamsharp.school. It has a lot of videos, and members do enjoy a lot of different benefits. We have our live workshops coming up. They're going to be exciting. So thank you so much for your continuous support.